Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've got a really interesting one for Would You Rock or Not today. This is what is described as the Gibson Nighthawk II prototype. And if you're not familiar with the Nighthawk, it originally looked like this back in the late 90s when it was first introduced. It's kind of a weird guitar. You get a Firebird pickup in the neck, you get a single coil in the middle, and then you get a slanted humbucker in the bridge. It's kind of one of those guitars that's on my to review list. I just haven't happened to get one yet. But as you can see here, I mean, it looks pretty basic besides, the pickup configuration. It's just kind of like a shrunken down, misshapen Les Paul with a Florentine cutaway. But there's been a bunch of different iterations. The one that I personally want to review is the higher end ST3, because that has the split parallelogram inlays, kind of like a Gibson Dove or an ES295. You get the crown headstock, you get the fancy flame top. I mean, this is the one you want. Nancy Wilson actually had a signature version of this guitar. There was also a version called a Blues Hawk, which was semi-hollow in construction and had P90 pickups. That Epiphone still makes a version of yet today. But no, today we talk about a prototype Nighthawk. However, this is not a prototype that you're used to seeing. This is a prototype of a sequel to that model, apparently. I'm not quite sure where this guy got the name Nighthawk unless it comes from some sort of paperwork, but let's take a look at this thing real quick. So at first glance, it's kind of a double cutaway shape, but it still has that flame maple top to it. You can tell it has some sort of a top carve like a Les Paul, so it's like a strangely misshapen Les Paul. Okay, so they've got that going for it as far as the original Nighthawk thing. But looking at our pickups here, it's just two humbuckers and a regular Nashville style bridge with a regular tailpiece. So that's definitely moving away from something. Looks like master volume, master tone with a 3-way toggle switch. And moving on here, we just have regular trapezoid inlays on your fretboard. And that headstock's looking a little bit goofy. If you need additional proof that this wasn't a prototype of the original run of Nighthawks, just take a look at the case and the case candy here. Because this case right here is what is considered like the Gibson soft case gig bag. If you're curious about the soft case, I actually compared it to both a gig bag as well as a hard shell case. Honestly, this video is pretty good. There's a bunch of cheesy edits. So these were something that was introduced in 2018 towards the end of the run, and I believe they still use them yet today. You can find them on like the Chicago Music Exchange exclusive SGs. So that means at the earliest this thing could be is about a 2018, and all this other case candy tells you the same thing. The black Gibson bag, the really cheap strap that hardly anybody uses, the black polished cloth, the Gibson multi-tool. So that's right, Gibson was thinking about selling this to you. But flipping over to the backside here, it looks like we have some sort of a comfort carve right here that encapsulates pretty much the whole side, so that'd be really useful. I don't think I have ever seen that control plate design on anything. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to secure that. I think it would have been cool if they had like an all-access heel joint to really sculpt this thing out. But the rest of this just looks pretty basic. The shot really encapsulates just how curved this top is. It kind of reminds me of an SG Diablo or even an SG Zoot Suit. They kind of have that carved top to them where it really creates a belly on these guitars. You can check out these reviews on the Zoot Suits. I've done every single color in every single iteration on those guys. But more importantly is the body shape. It reminds me of the black eye of Gibson. The Gibson Eye, it's kind of got that same contoured body with the super sharp pointy horns going on, except for this one does not have the carved top to it. It was completely flat. It was a Guitar of the Month guitar. The black ones were prototypes, and these things never got a bunch of love, but they're slightly collectible just due to their limited edition nature. But the pickup layout is definitely similar to our new Nighthawk that we're looking at. So that was my first instinct on trying to figure out what they were trying to do with this. Was this just a flame top, carved top version of a Gibson Eye? Because, it's looking pretty similar, but the control layout is not there. But looking at this, it made me go, this actually reminds me of another model that Gibson was doing around the same time. The Gibson Modern Double Cut, the PRS ripoff. You can check out this review and demo if you haven't heard of one of those before, but they've also made semi-hollow versions of this guitar. Basically, what everybody said about these is they were kind of interesting. I was actually surprised how many people like this. They just thought they were overpriced at $4,500+. So when they ended up blowing these things out for around $2,500, that's when a lot of people decided to pick these guys up because they were pretty interesting. They have that same flame top with the carve, maybe not quite quite as extreme as the one we're looking at today, but I think this is what they took inspiration off of, because look right here on my title. This is a 2017 Gibson Modern Double Cut. So maybe it's kind of a combination of both of them, but you're going to notice that this also utilizes a very similar control layout. Master volume, master tone with a 3-way toggle switch. Now this one looks like it's a little bit more crammed together, but you know, it's a similar thing going on here. This photo, I can't help but smile, because not only do you have a little smiley face right here with his nose poking up, look what they have here. Thin binding in the cutaway. So a historical spec on a guitar that's not historical in the slightest. But this guitar was offered by Spoon Guitar, so you can check out their website. It looks like they build their own guitars as well as sell used instruments. So I'm definitely appreciative that he took the time to take some really nice photos of this guitar. It looks like we have a barrel output jack. You don't see that too often in Gibson territory. You also have those large strap buttons that hold your strap on pretty good. And binding, that's something that's different as compared to the eye and the other ones. And our bridge is that modern style that you can adjust with the Allen key. But the back appears to be made of mahogany, potentially 2 pieces here. I don't see any other seam lines unless there's one hiding over here or something. But our other strap button is located here at the top of the horn. And once again, we can see that kind of weird shaped back plate. So we kind of have a mix of the double cut and the eye, but what is this headstock? It's pretty much taken directly from a very failed model, the Gibson Firebird Zero. I mean, it was popular enough to sell a whole bunch of them, but they didn't have the greatest reputation. But look at that headstock, and then you look at this headstock. They basically just made it a little bit more pointier and gave it more of a Firebird-esque headstock design by slicing away some of the veneer to reveal that red finish underneath. I can't say I like this headstock design though, because it just reminds me too much of this headstock. I guess if you want to feel better about it, you could say it reminds you of like the Gibson Vegas standard and high roller versions. They kind of have a similar thing going on there. And honestly, these guitars are actually very similar to the Nighthawk II, except for they're more semi-hollow-like in construction. But it still utilizes that cheap Gibson truss rod cover. You got 6 on a side, looks like potentially Grover tuners with straight string pull, so that's nice. And that looks like potentially acrylic inlays to me from this angle. And is that an ebony fretboard? Unfortunately, no, it's not. It's Richlight. So not great for the purists, but honestly, that Richlight board looks pretty good. Some of these can look pretty dried out. But what's kind of exciting is if this model were to come out in the future, it might actually have an ebony fretboard now that that's starting to get used again. But on the back side of the headstock, that looks like mini Grover tuners to me. It's just stamped prototype though. Usually on modern day prototypes, they'll just write it on, kind of like the Kazuyoshi Saito Les Paul that I did a review and demo on. So seeing one stamped prototype like the way that they did the 2013 50s Tribute SG, it's kind of peculiar, but you can see how they utilize an extra wing right here to make up that pointy headstock. But overall, just a really interesting guitar that just utilized so many influences of other models. And take a look at that neck. The mahogany wood grain on that is just gorgeous. So do you guys think Gibson should release this model to the public? Is it something you would be interested in buying? Personally, I think this one was better left in the prototype stages. There's been enough guitars like this already that have not seen huge commercial success, so it doesn't surprise me that they scrapped this one and sent it off to Japan. Because that's just where all the best of the best goes, as well as the freaky prototypes that Gibson does not want people seeing. So it's always fun looking at what shows up in the Japan market. But perhaps it's just the color that's not working for me. Maybe like a trans black one of these would look really cool. But my best guess is this was initially meant to be the Gibson USA iteration of the custom shop double cuts, just a little bit more swooped out. I mean, it's kind of Stratocaster-like at the same time. So who knows, we might see these in the future, but seeing as Gibson has changed ownership and they're being pretty conservative right now, probably not. So for today's playing demo, let's go ahead and check out some similar guitars. The only question left, would you rock the Nighthawk II prototype or not? Leave your answer down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.